So it's finally time to rebuild the knuckles on Dusty. So we're going to be replacing all the seals, all the bearings, checking the insides, and then we'll have a new knuckle. So it's not the trickiest thing to actually take the knuckle apart. You just got to take all the brakes off. Make sure to turn your locking hub to the free position when you take them out. So there's a little circlip in the inside here. Just get your circlip pliers and pull that out. And then you can get your 12mm and start undoing these nuts on the outside. So now we've got to deal with these little cone washers in there. Now there's a few ways to get them out. You can either bash on the top there until they pop out. You can get a little punch and find the split and hit on that, and sometimes that'll pop them out. Sometimes you've got to do a bit of both. Sometimes you get pliers in there and pull them out. You just got to find what works. Locking washer in here, and then you got another nut in the back, and then behind that all you've got a thrust washer that will come off when you pull the hub off. So there's your thrust washer, there's your outer bearing, and here's the hub. This is the hub we just pulled off. You can see all the oil. There's only meant to be grease in these. So that seal's gone, and the inner axle seal, which is the last thing out of all of this, is gone as well. So sometimes this spindle's nice enough to just pop off, like that. Sometimes you have to get a punch behind it. Yeah, that's not very nice in there. No grease at all. So to pull the axle out, there's a flat spot on the top and bottom, and you kind of got to get them lined up with the top and bottom. This one doesn't really want to do it. So we've got to get rid of the steering arm now. You've got to pull the pin out, flatten it down, and then push it or pull it through. Then it's a 17mm we got to undo. That was really loose. Meant to be about 100, 110 Newton meters this, and that was probably definitely not that much. Now because hitting it out wouldn't work, I have to get my puller now, and hopefully this will crack it. So we got it off, a bit of heat and a bit of WD-40. It's all off now. Now this is nice and smooth. The other side was really chunky when you were doing this, but that's way too loose. So now we've got to get the CV out, which is proven to be a bit of a pain. So you might have to pull the top Kingpin bearing out, or just loosen it off at least and see if it helps. So I'm still having a bit of trouble after I remove the steering arm. Doesn't want to come out, so I'm going to remove the whole swivel hub now. But before we do that, we have to remove all the wipers off the back. There's 8 10mm bolts. They pull out, undo the bottom Kingpin cap, and then the whole swivel hub should pop off. So here she is, finally out. I actually had to get the file onto there to give it a bit more clearance to come out, because it kept catching. And also on the CV there's all little notches in there. Don't know if you can see them, but every bit where the bore runs is got a chunk out of it. So after looking at this CV a bit harder, you can find that crack there. Pretty big one through the whole CV. So we're going to have to order a new CV, and then we'll be back when that comes, and we'll keep going with the swivel hub. So I've managed to pick up a new CV joint. Now this is a lot nicer than the old one. Got no cracks. So we'll swap this one out for that one. So removing the CV joint, there's a little circlip in here, and I'm going to pull that off first. Sit that there, and then I'll show you what to do next. So now I've got a block of wood underneath this, piece of pipe in the vise here, and we're just going to drop it. And just like that she pops out. So now that we've got it in two pieces, you get your new circlip because the old one's probably shagged out or broken when you pulled it off. And just slide it over, and there's the little lip in there. So now that that's over, I've got a fairly large cable tie, and I'm just going to put that over the circlip and get that down as tight as I can. And now we can get our new drive shaft, or our new CV shaft, and slide that over. So once you get your splines lined up, you just want to tap it down on a board. And there you go, that clicked in. Now we've got to cut that cable tie off. So get rid of that cable tie, make sure it's clipped in, and then we can get the circlip that goes at the back there, move that up, and clip that under there. So now that we've sorted the new CV joint out, I want to clean the inside of the swivel hub up. So just a wire wheel. So now I want to get the inner axle seal out, and you can see it just in there. I get a screwdriver from the top and I just pry on it. So there's your old inner axle seal. Got a new one for that. We'll clean up where it mates on the actual axle housing, and then we'll put the new one in. So this is the new inner axle seal. I put a bit of grease around the outside so it goes in a bit easier. And I'll just sit that in there. Make sure it's seated evenly. Like that. And then I think this is a 34mm socket. Put that over, and you want it just touching the metal sides. And we'll just give it a tap. So that's now nice and flush with the axle housing. We can start dropping out the bearing races and redoing the whole hub now. So dropping the races out is pretty easy. You got these two little notches in there, and you want to go through the top and put a drift or a punch in there, and just a few knocks each side, knock it out. Then you come from the bottom and do the same for the top, and then we'll knock the new ones back in. So before we put the new races in, so we don't damage them, we're just going to clean the knuckle up with, this is like just a kind of like a strip disc. Clean it up. It's not very nice, so we'll get all the paint off the back, get all this flaky rust and stuff off, and make it nice and shiny. So now that we've got everything cleaned up and the old races out, get the new race, and the big flat bottom bit goes down for the top, and you just want to get that lined up, and then tap it in a bit. So now that we've got the races in, we've got to put the wiper seals and all that on. Now this felt one goes on first because it goes on last to the actual swivel hub. Your rubber one goes on second. A bit easier. And then you've got this split metal ring that goes on like that. Now I can never seem to not bend them a little bit, so just bend them back, good as new, and then we'll go clean the hub up, pack some bearings, and then we can put it all back together. So now that I've got the swivel hub all cleaned up, we can start packing the Kingpin bearings. So They don't take too much. You just want to get a bit of bearing grease on your hand, and then there's the wide opened end, and then there's the closed end. And the closed end is kind of at the smallest part of the taper, but you want to push the grease in to the widest part. And you push it through there, and you just want to wait till it starts coming out the small end of the taper. You don't want to overpack it because they can overheat. You want to still leave a little bit of room but have it nice and packed. Sit that in the top there. Now you can get a tool to hold this bottom bearing up underneath while you're putting the actual swivel hub on, but I find it just easier. You get it the right way, you just set it in there where it's going to go, slide it over from the bottom, and then it'll just sit in like that, and then you can put your Kingpin caps on. Now whatever shims you pulled off the top and bottom, you want to keep them on the top and bottom where they came from. You just slide that in, make sure it's all lined up. You can give it a bit of a tap in. We'll do the same for the bottom. So on top here you've got your 4 cone washers that go around. Then on top of that's your spring washer, and then goes your nuts. So these Kingpin nuts have got to be torqued down to about 100 Newton meters. So now we've got to test the preload on it. I'm going for about 2 kilos, 3 kilos. So it's when it's starting, and that's 2.8 there. So that's pretty perfect. So if you tested the preload and it's too loose or too tight, you've got to adjust your shims accordingly. So if it's too tight, you've got to add more shims, and if it's too loose, you've got to take some shims out. So now we have to put the wiper seals and everything onto the swivel hub. So this is the split ring that we put on first. Now you've got to clip that on, push that in, have the ends together, and then you've got the rubber one that just goes in top of it, and then you've got the felt one with the flat spot up the top. Then the holding brackets that go over the back, flat spot to the top, and that ridge pointing out. Set that there. Grab your bolts, feed them through the felt, make sure everything's still lined up, and then you can wind them in and do the same for the other 3. So that's the wiper seals on the back. Swivel hub's pretty much done now. I've just got to put the CV on, and then put the dust cover on, and then put the spindle on. So I packed the new CV with a bit of grease, put it in the swivel hub, and then packed the swivel hub full of grease. It's almost level. That's probably a good amount in there. Could go a bit more, doesn't really matter. But now we've got to put the spindle on, clean all that up, dust plate, and that's pretty much the whole swivel hub done. So I've set the spindle up in the vise here, and I'm just going to try and get rid of all the old gasket material. I might get the wire wheel onto the rest of it to get all that leftover stuff, but the main stuff you can just get with one of these scrapers. So now that the spindle's all cleaned up, we can start thinking about getting some gaskets and putting this in the dust cover on. So putting the spindle on now, I'm just going to put a little bit of sealer around the face, and that'll just kind of seal all the little pinholes if there is any. Keep the gasket held on there. Put the gasket on there. Look at which way it goes. And then put a bit of sealer on the swivel hub face and slide that over. Put a bolt in just to hold it for the moment, because then we have to put the backing plate for the brakes on, and then a few more gaskets in this other seal. Now on the bolts, probably doesn't really need it, but I'm just putting a bit of anti-seize to stop them locking up if I ever have to take it apart again. So these bolts get torqued down to around the 50 Newton meter mark. It's not overly tight, but just get them to torque spec. Now that's the swivel hub all rebuilt. Now it doesn't look too pretty, but it's definitely going to do a better job than it did before. It's got all new seals in it, all the new Kingpin bearings and racers. In the next few videos we're going to rebuild the hub and then rebuild the brakes.